you have to start with your organization and realize what limitations do we have here, number one. Before we go and just grab whatever technology is popular or trending that we've heard, we've got to look at our organization and say what's realistic for our personnel. I hosted a roundtable at PI Apparel a couple years ago to kind of get a better understanding of why aren't people integrating technology in their workflows? Identifying and mapping out workflows is a task that someone has to own and do correctly. If you're not doing that type of bird's eye view and study, you're going to have a really hard time. Some of the feedback that I received at the roundtable was we work every day. We're not about to spend work hours getting trained on some very dense technology that requires us 8 hours. We don't have time. So you have to look at your organization, figure out what people are willing to do, and figure out the point of entry that has the least amount of friction.
Welcome back
to another episode of the Innovate on Purpose podcast, hosted by Matt Mueller,
best-selling author of The Mindful Innovator and Rethink Retail's top retail expert.
We help retail leaders find clarity so they can grow their businesses purposefully.
We will uncover mindful tips, innovative solutions, and purposeful leadership advice and strategies that you can apply immediately to your retail innovation. Are you ready to innovate on purpose?
Hey, before we jump into the episode today, I just wanted to say thank you for hitting the play button. You being here fires me up, and I cannot wait to share with you the insights that are going to make a difference in your business. Do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and leave a review so I can reach as many retail leaders as possible. They too need to hear this. Okay, let's do it. Hello and welcome back to another episode of Innovate on Purpose. Today here we're going to talk about retail and technology. I know it's like water or oil and vinegar, and they sometimes just don't mix. Every time that I try and do a tech project within retail, there's always major challenges in trying to get it adopted, to make that expense and actually put it into stores. So we have someone here very special today that's going to help us navigate that space of integrating technology within their stores. That is Jessica Couch. She is a top retail expert, a Rethink Retail advisor, and just a complete expert within technology and retail. So Jessica, welcome to the show today.
Thank you so much. Happy to be here and talk about my favorite subject.
Yeah, I'm so excited to dive into this. I swear it is such a hard thing to do in retail, is to get technology into stores. I swear, some of the POS systems that are in some of these stores are ancient. Things that are from the 70s are still there. It's crazy. Tell me a little bit about how do you approach technology in stores to make it simpler?
Yeah, I think my approach that I try to help companies consider is start with the most important person. And the most important person is obviously the shopper, the customer, right? And from there, what I try to do is figure out what's the biggest problem they're having with your store. So is the biggest problem that they're having is they can't navigate your store? Is the biggest problem that they're having is they're not sure what products you have, where they are, or how they're relevant to them? Because that happens sometimes with beauty. Is the biggest problem that they have is that they don't enjoy the experience? And oftentimes when I'm discussing this with retailers, they don't know what the biggest problem is. And often that's where this conversation starts, is when was the last time you even collected feedback from your customers? And then how are you doing that? Because I think when people hear feedback, they automatically think, hey, thanks for purchasing. Can you take this 5-minute survey? That is not the type of feedback that customers want to give. And now that we're in an era where social commerce and social media exists, so people are always wanting to talk about themselves, not taking advantage of that is kind of foolish. So I'll give you an example. Years ago, I worked with Nordstrom Beauty to launch their inclusive beauty campaign. But before we were ever even able to launch a campaign or a marketing strategy or anything, we collected over 2,500 videos of actual Nordstrom customers and could-be customers talking to us about their beauty experience, what they bought, what's in their cabinets. We called it what's in their beauty bag, and then how they felt about Nordstrom. And because it wasn't your traditional, hey, can you take 5 minutes to do this survey? We did compensate them enough, but it wasn't hundreds of dollars. What we got was such a wealth of feedback that told a story across different personas of customers. The most interesting part is that originally Nordstrom Beauty thought their competition would be, Bergdorf Beauty or Macy's Beauty. And it's like, no, your competition is Sephora. It's going to be, the Ultas of the world. It's going to be and beauty supply stores because you're in the beauty space. So I think for retailers, there's assumptions that get made around what their problem is and how people are accepting their products. And then there's the actual voice of the customer. And without gathering the right information, you can't even think about integrating a technology because you don't know what problem you're solving. And so again, the whole point of having that conversation about starting with the most important person is the most important person is going to tell you what their problem is. And then your job is to solve that problem. And the right technology comes after figuring all of those things out and having a deep understanding of this is where we're falling short with the customer because this is what they're telling us.
Yeah, I love that approach, Jessica. Yeah, starting with the problem is absolutely the key, right? Like it's the foundation. You have to start not with a problem, but the biggest problem, like you said. So just that is key. And I was going to ask a question, but I think I know the answer to it now is how do you find the biggest problem? And that's speaking with your consumers.
Yeah.
And I think the approach of doing it more than just a survey is perfect. And that's exactly where I lean in as well. Is I do ethnographic research. So the ethnographic research is going into the homes of shoppers, walking stores alongside them, doing the video interviews and the diaries to understand exactly what are they experiencing within that experience. What would you say to the retailer that asks you, like, hey, Jessica, how do I find that problem quickly and effectively on a shoestring budget? What should they do?
Well, you still have to compensate your customers, right? So some customers could be motivated by, I want $50 certificate. Okay. And again, a qualitative analysis, you don't need 2,500 different responses, but I wanted to collect as many as possible because, that gives you a wealth of information for your own neural networks. But I think compensation, whether it's a percentage off, a discount, or you recognize them. I hate to say this, but like consumers can be bought for cheap now by just posting them on their page or, putting spotlight on them and making them feel really good. Sending them something that they can have an Instagrammable moment with will not have to cost you so much as a gift card to shop. But making your customer feel good is the best way to do that. But I think like retailers totally forget. I don't know, like we're in an age where people go so hard on the technology spectrum, they forget the human portion of it. You're still interacting with a person who has feelings and thoughts and wants to feel accepted and all of these motivations for shopping. Like we cannot leave that out when we're thinking about how do we collect the right information and incentivize our shoppers to give us feedback. Even if you just pay attention to your top shoppers, when was the last time you did something nice for them? Do you have brunches for them? Do you invite them in for private showings? Or are you just sending out emails and expecting those emails to be the best form of communication between you and your customers? I think like brands and retailers have to consider you're courting your customer like you're trying to date them because it's so easy for them to go anywhere else in the world and never think about you ever again. Those emails won't work. The text updates won't work if they don't feel connected. So I do think it doesn't have to be expensive to feel a connection with your customer, but it does have to be thoughtful and relevant to what their motivations are. But if you don't even know the types of customers you have based on the personas, their motivations, why they shop, what they're looking for, you need to do your homework.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the key is that behavior piece too, right? Where it's like it's understanding their motivations and the psychological reasons why they shop your brand. Like that's so key. Like and when you like mention like surveys and just doing like a survey and saying, hey, rate your experience. What did you like about it? The chances of that consumer being able to accurately remember that shopping experience, whether that was 10 minutes ago or a day ago, they're not going to be able to tell you accurately how that experience went. But if you actually follow them along in the store with them, if you do a video diary and can feel the words that they're saying, that's when you can find out, like, okay, this is what they're really experiencing.
Exactly. I love a video diary because I feel like people, they want to talk and they want to be rewarded for sharing or saying something. And even you could even have that set up as a place in your store where perhaps people should be able to go in there at free will and just give feedback. And, depending on the feedback, they could be, get a percentage off, get a coupon or come to our private events or be featured on our page. Even if it's good or bad, it's like, the most important thing that retailers can do right now is collect as much feedback as possible. You can scrape social media for some of that feedback, which I've seen that retailers don't really pay attention to doing, but you absolutely want to get the feedback from the customers that are shopping with you and maybe the customers that you've lost. Because what we learned in a Nordstrom survey that I thought was interesting, the customers that were not going into Nordstrom simply just did not know that Nordstrom offered the same things. It was a total disconnect between communication. They were like, well, I go to Ulta for this, or I go to Sephora for that. And then when it's like, did you know that, Nordstrom has this? It was like, oh, well, no, I didn't know. Nordstrom was making an assumption at the time that people just knew what they were about because they know their ethos and they know their brand, they know their retail, and they eat, sleep, and breathe it. But it was like, in reality, it's like everyone else is like, okay, that's y'all. This is us. We're going to Sephora.
Yeah, it's hard to see the label from the inside of the bottle, right? It's just like you're inside of the company. You think everyone knows what you offer, but I can't tell you how many times I was sitting on the couch of a consumer like with the brand and they'd be like, yeah, they don't carry that product. Or I'm like, what? No, they do. They really do.
Yeah.
And you want to almost correct them in the moment, but it's like that's your aha moment. Those are your insights when they're telling you something that contradicts something that is true. It's interesting to kind of get on when you're on the couch of that consumer.
Exactly.
So thinking about like the problems and finding out, like, doing the research with the consumers, understanding like what their problems are. How do you get to the biggest problem? How do you kind of synthesize that in for all those insights from videos or whatever content it may be?
That's a great question. So when you have the level of feedback where you have customers kind of telling you what the various problems are, you can sort that data to figure out like, okay, most customers are saying they have an information problem where they don't know the type of brands you have. They don't understand what your products are doing or blah, blah, blah. You start to group these things to say, is this an information problem? Is this an access problem? Is this a, moving around the store problem? Or is this a service problem? So once we've gotten enough feedback and categorized it like in a purposeful way, I think we then have to go and look at numbers. We need to know, like, on average, how much foot traffic is coming in? When does it go down? When does it go up? What's bringing them in? How are people responding to emails? How are people coming back and doing multiple purchases? Are they putting multiple things in their cart? I think there's two sides of data that we have to first categorize, look at, and then begin to see if a story emerges behind correlation of information and causation. Mm-hmm. And this is where data can get tricky because people jump to conclusions like, okay, we get it. So like, I'll give you an example. When athleisure was first coming into, like, now it's so mainstream, you can't even remember when we didn't have athleisure. But I think it was back in 2013 or maybe 2015, sometime around then, we were watching a trend happen. And the trend that was happening is that denim sales were on decline and athleisure was on an increase. Like, people were increasingly buying athleisure. And a lot of analysts assume that obviously denim is on a decline and athleisure is on an incline because people don't want denim. So let's just stop making denim. That was the first conclusion that was drawn. It's like, okay, we see this consumer behavior shifting, and we'll talk about this later, but we're going to automatically jump to a conclusion. Upon further research, that was not the case because Khloe Kardashian dropped Good American Denim that same year and did $1 million in a day. And the difference was, it wasn't that people, just didn't have an affinity for denim. It was another factor. People were buying more and more things online, of course, right? This is like 2013, 15. It's easy to buy stuff online. We're doing that. One of the things that you could not buy online is denim. And why could you not buy denim online? Well, I did an observational study at Cornell of how men shop for denim, and around 80% of them have to touch it first because you're trying to figure out, does it have stretch? Is this, what type of twill is this? Is it solid like I like this, that, and the third, right? So it's a multi-sensory engagement object. And when you move that online, most of the senses that people are using to engage with this is no longer available. So now that becomes a trust factor for, can I trust that this is the item that I want based on a visual? And the answer was no. Yeah. So now we understand that people did not want to take the risk of buying denim online because there wasn't enough information, because it's an information problem. Whereas athleisure, because there's stretch, there's spandex, it's loose, you can afford to take a higher risk because you can kind of mitigate fit better than you would with denim. Denim is so specific
It's a
to
big
fit.
risk.
It's a big risk. You
Yeah.
still have to
I would
try
never
denim
buy jeans
on.
online. No way.
Exactly. And so what Good American did that was genius, they started paying attention to what customers were saying as to why they weren't buying denim. They didn't make the assumption like, okay, well, people just don't want denim. They were listening and said, oh, people aren't buying denim because they don't understand how it's going to fit on their waist to hip ratio. They don't know if it has stretch. They can't see somebody who looks like them. And they built a brand off of those problems. And they did $1 million that day. And so the whole idea that, well, the data showed that denim was on a decline, athletes' results, therefore people didn't want denim, was absolutely wrong. And this is why we have to be really careful with the conclusions that we draw and to make sure that we always prioritize the voice of the consumer and not the assumptions that we have when we're looking at data and metrics and trying to figure out, okay, well, what is the most important problem? Because Good American saw that the most important problem was just communicating how the denim would fit. And women went crazy. To this day, people are still buying denim from Good American. And we buy athleisure because it's great, but there's no substitute for good jeans and fit in a world that's digital. And so they bridge that gap. And that is what retailers have to think outside the box. It's not going to be cookie cutter. It's not as simple anymore, but it also isn't complex. It just involves, bringing the customer's information and data in it and prioritizing that across the board to get a good result.
Yeah, it's going a little bit deeper, asking the why, right? Being a little bit more curious and not just making that assumption that this is the why, right? It's like, well, ask the consumer, because the consumer might have a completely different reason why than you might have.
And they do.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's talk a little bit more about the technology piece of it. Like we're getting deep into the consumer and we're really paying attention to that behavior, finding that big problem. Now we have this problem. How do we get technology in there as that solution? Like, where do you start when it comes to the technology piece?
Yeah, I think first you have to start with your organization and realize what limitations do we have here, number one. So like now that we have what the consumer wants, we've identified the problem. Before we go and just grab whatever technology is popular or trending that we've heard, we've got to look at our organization and say, what's realistic for our personnel? We know that we have people. So here's another example. I hosted a roundtable at PI Apparel a couple years ago to kind of get a better understanding of like, why aren't people integrating technology in their workflows? Well, first, identifying and mapping out workflows is a task that someone has to own and do correctly. If you cannot do it internally, hire that out. Like someone needs to come in and really figure out like for everyone's workflows, here's the gaps, here's where the efficiency lacks, here's what group would be best to house this technology in order for it to be efficient. But if you're not doing that type of bird's eye view and study, you're going to have a really hard time. But some of the feedback that I received at the roundtable was like, we work every day. We're not about to spend work hours getting trained on some very dense technology that requires us like 8 hours a day for 5 days a week. We don't have time. So with that, exactly. So you have to look at your organization, figure out what people are willing to do, and figure out the point of entry that has the least amount of friction. You may not be able to get the big, huge, expensive tech yet, but perhaps you have a technology that eases up those workflows so that the people who would need to work on a certain technology is no longer bogged down by doing silly admin tasks, but now they have tasks to learn something independently and to be good at it. Another thing, to go back to the education piece, tech used to be really difficult to integrate, just difficult. The learning curves were steep. And then you had to have someone that you call the account manager to let them know that you're having a problem. They'll get back to you 24 hours. Now you can't do your work. Your boss is on your back. You don't want to use this tool anymore. And that right there probably wipes out a ton of tech. But now we're in the age where AI, which, AI is great. And then AI has some drawbacks. But it allows people to be able to access knowledge instantly, which means you don't have to flip through a manual. You don't have to call an account manager. You don't have to sit there and be embarrassed because you don't know how to use something. You can literally just ask a question. You could upload manuals into it and you can be like, hey, how do I do this? Explain it to me. Make it plain like I'm a 5-year-old. That is one of the best use cases I've seen for AI when it comes to helping people be independent within their environments. And then finally, I think like once you've identified the problem that you solve, you got to pick the tool that does that. So there's tools are great and they're exciting. Like, oh my God, we can do Gen AI and that's great because, we can keep generating new clothing ideas or new ideas of how we could do these designs. If no one has asked for that, If that's not feedback you got, in these surveys, let's avoid wasting time and money
Yeah.
on expensive technology that is not going to produce a result. Because the minute it doesn't work, everyone will abandon ship. Your CFO will be angry. Your CEO will be curious. Why did we sign off on this? Someone could lose their job. No one wants to take that risk. So I think if we approach this in a more intelligent way, thinking about empowering the people that have to use it, considering the environment that you're already in, and then figuring out what's the least amount of friction and then build on it, I think that technology integration can be less scary and we can see widespread adoption throughout the industry and not just, something that was snake oil or something that people are like, well, we tried it once, it didn't work, and we didn't have time to learn it, so that's it.
Yeah. So when you're thinking about like the technology and applying it to stores, thinking about that workflow is so important because you don't want to add more friction. You want to remove the friction.
All the
And then
time.
also seeing that benefit, like, is it solving the problem that you really wanted to set out to solve? Is it fixing it by 10x?
Yeah.
Like one of the challenges I faced, like I was actually implementing a new POS system in stores, and it was in a space where they didn't have POS systems. So we were actually going to have to put in new hardware, software, everything within these stores. And the biggest challenge was, even though there was going to be an ROI in this program that we saw was like about 32% increase in revenue from this new POS system, we had the hardest time implementing it because it had a cost associated with it. What do you tell retailers, and how do you kind of get over that, like, the sticker shock, that budget piece of it, and get them to actually take that leap to put technology in?
Yeah, for me, what I've tried to do in the past is to really do a deep dive of where retailers are bleeding money so that they can see like this small cost of this ticket price that you're, so upset about doesn't even scratch the surface of the compounded cost of you not implementing it because people are not being able to check out. You don't have CRM tools that are interacting with your POS system. You can't do anything special with your customer. And X amount of years, your competition is going to implement this and you're not, and you will be bankrupt. So scare tactics that are based on fact work a lot. Like for me, because it's tech, I try to lead so heavily with the numbers so that people don't fall in love with the idea or something that you've seen or some type of branding. I want people to fall in love with the fact that this makes sense. If we do this, then this, we get that reduces, that's great. And oftentimes, I always try to make sure that the decision maker or the person interested is the check writer and is close to the finance team who can then champion it for us. Because if you're in a department where numbers are not a concern to you, you just ask for the budget and you execute and you're like, okay, I think this is cool, but this doesn't work. I'm not sure you're the best person to hear this pitch or to understand how valuable this is. We need to talk to the team that's like, we're losing money. Show us what will help. Let's crunch the numbers. So sometimes I feel like that positioning of the right person is important too. And no offense to anyone in whatever role, it's just the numbers people. Yeah, they get it when other people don't. And I think it's important to always have them involved as well, because there's always a shock. But people spend on the things. It also lets me know we haven't sold you well enough if you're not just like, what's the cost?
Yeah.
Because it's like you spend on what you like, you spend on what you love, you'll buy stuff that you can't afford, you're signing off on events and things that don't make sense. So it's kind of like, you mean to tell me that you don't want to save money? That lets me know that we're not talking sometimes to the right team.
Yeah. Yeah. Or you haven't shown them enough pain, right? I think that's really a big one. Like,
bring the pain.
Yeah, you gotta kind of just put the knife in and kind of twist it a little bit.
Twist it.
Okay, I gotta do something.
Yeah, like you don't have to get this, but your competition will, and you're gonna lose. So enjoy.
Absolutely. That's the way to do it. So I had this one project I was working on where we were trying to create a new process within the store. It was going to be a hefty investment for a retailer. We wound up taking the executive team into the experience and actually taking them to the store and walking the store with them, and actually had a consumer experience. So we pretended we were the customer, and we identified and highlighted each of the pain points that their consumers were feeling. After we experienced it, we then actually showed them videos of the consumers talking about those pains. But then at the third point is that we actually then show them the cost of each of those pain points. And with this one retailer, which is a national retailer, it came out to $37 million in loss every single year with these pain points. And if they were to just deploy a couple of $1 million to fix this, they would be able to recoup that. So,
Wow.
and the great thing was is that, you kind of just reposition the opportunity as loss.
Yeah.
Right. So that was kind of the key for us was to just position it as you're losing this every single day that you don't do it.
Exactly.
And all of a sudden that's what changed everything, because we originally approached it where it was like, well, this would actually drive for more revenue, right? This would actually grow your business. And that was not impactful because it wasn't pain. So once we put
Exactly.
yeah.
I think you make
Feel it.
Yeah, I think you make such an important point, because a lot of tech teams get frustrated because they build a really incredible product and they can't pitch it. And they can't pitch it because it's too fairy tale. It's too focused on features. It's too, well, look at our branding, all this. And it's not enough. You're going to lose. Here's how much you're losing by. Here's how we help. And I think sometimes that's a disconnect with solution providers and the person that needs it is you haven't found the thing that really makes them go, ooh, we
Yeah.
can't afford to not have it. And I think sometimes in those pitches and in what they're doing, it's not going to land well and you're going to get dismissed. Because also I think we have to consider that retail, luxury, fashion, these are not places where it's normal to have technology. And they're antiquated, archaic methods from God knows when. And there are people that aren't really interested in having to change what they're doing. They don't want their jobs threatened, all of these things. And so when you come in and you're trying to pitch something in this industry, your positioning can't be about what you think is great. It can't be about what worked in automotive when you worked there for 25 years. It can't be about, well, I worked for a cell phone company. This is how we pitch. It's not logical. A lot of this, some of the motivations that people have doesn't always follow the same logic as other industries. But when you talk to the right people about those numbers that are always bleeding, those are, the fact that there's dead inventory, the fact that there's returns, the fact that people aren't even coming into your store, but they're going somewhere, those are the things that you may have to lead with and kind of, not be doom and gloom, but you got to be realistic, because the retail industry is in a flux right now, and everyone's not going to survive. Some of the biggest retailers we saw in fashion, for instance, couldn't even pay their vendors and brands, and that's concerning. Because if we can't go the wholesale method, that changes how, new designers are going to want to come out and kind of present their collections or present what they're trying to build. And then, for fashion, for instance, the DTC method is also kind of bloated. It's really, really tough to do DTC now because you're not just competing with other brands, you're competing with governments, you're competing with all sorts of people who want to control the eyes of consumers. And your little bitty fashion store is literally on the lowest end of the totem pole of what is important. And so because we're in a time now where retail is shifting, people don't care about email as much. People aren't really looking at, the notifications. There's this gray space of how are you really going to entice people? And that's what technology is for. But if you don't get the right tech, the right methodology, you will become extinct. This is a very interesting time.
It is a very interesting time. It's a time and place where people are going, or retailers are going to get disrupted, right? Because there's so much opportunity out there. And the ones that are really listening, to consumers are going to be the ones that take advantage right now.
Absolutely.
What has been the best piece of technology in retail that you have seen in the last 12 months?
The best technology that I've seen in the last 12 months. This is going to sound very like, what? But honestly, that self-checkout can now identify fruit in grocery stores is like, thank you. Nothing was more frustrating than it being like, what type of kumquat is this? And I'm like, I don't know. There were 5. Why can't you? I love that the technology now has a visual recognition, the weight recognition, and it's doing its best to make my experience to get in and out of a grocery store faster, better, more complete. I love it. And I'm like, wow. I sometimes look at the self-checkout line and it's super long and it's literally people there just I'll scan you, and nobody wants to, but it's something about the independence of it that people like. We love shopping, but being able to be independent and having information. Now, what I would like to see in a grocery store next is I would like to self-navigate around the grocery store according to what I'm here for in a better way. So I wouldn't mind being able to upload my list of okay, this is what I'm going to go get. I need to know every aisle that it's on.
Where to find me.
Yeah, and I need to know the cost before I don't want to get to my self-checkout and get groceries just this, I didn't expect this, or, oh, okay.
Yeah.
I want all of that beforehand because I'm planning it before I get there. I have to make a list or I'll overshop. So
Yeah.
that's what I would like to see. But I love that self-checkout got a little upgrade. That makes me happy. I was like, whoever implemented this across the Wegmans, thank you. I appreciate it.
That's great. And I think it's a testament to that technology doesn't need to be sexy and
No.
cutting edge. It just needs to help solve a real problem. And that is a huge problem. I hate having to look up every single produce SKU so I can check out. When we have too much produce in our cart, that's when we don't go self-checkout, right? So
Exactly.
too much of a pain in the ass.
Yeah, because you're like, I'm not about to figure this out. Yeah,
No.
I really love that. That's true.
Yeah, and I like the wayfinding idea. If whoever does that, or not just the wayfinding piece, but also the part that you mentioned, which is the cost. Like if you can count up that cost before you get to the register, that'd be amazing. Because sometimes I go into Walmart, I don't know if my shopping bill that month's going to be, or that week, going to be $200 or $350, and
You have no idea.
Never know what you're gonna...
Exactly. And I feel like right now would be the perfect time for that type of technology because there's a lot of uncertainty. See, this is the other part of integrating tech. Yes, listen to your customer. Yes, identify pain points, but you also have to know the climate we're in. We're in an interesting climate where do consumers want to know how much you're going to spend prior to? Absolutely. That would be helpful for them. They can navigate through your store quickly, make their own decisions. And do consumers want their expectations managed? Absolutely. No one wants to be surprised anymore. We just want the most efficient experience. And that's across grocery, luxury, beauty, whatever it is. People are wanting better experiences. It's just, it's not being delivered quite yet.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of opportunity out there for sure.
Yeah, lots of them. Yeah. So we're not going to be doom and gloom, y'all. It's like a silver lining is where there are gaps, there are opportunities for us to fill those in a creative way. It doesn't have to cost you a lot. You don't have to hire these huge firms and stuff. This can be done in such a simple way. It makes you more money and saves on your bottom line. Why aren't you implementing tech now?
Yeah, absolutely. Jessica, thank you so much for all of your insights today. So it's refreshing to hear your approach to putting technology into retail. It's so needed. And I think these insights are just gold. So definitely don't overcomplicate it. Figure out what the biggest problem is by talking to your consumers. Start small, take a little bite size. You don't have to eat the elephant all in one bite.
Exactly.
Yeah. And don't go fall for the sexy stuff. Just
please.
Yeah. Just get shit done.
Yeah. Period. That's it, Matt. You get it.
That's
Thank you for having me.
Of course. Is there anything else you want to tell the audience before we end the episode today?
No, but check out the Rethink Retail Advisory because this is the type of things that we specialize in, and we would love to help you solve some of your biggest problems in retail across the board.
Awesome. And I believe you have some special event coming up too, right?
Oh my gosh, yes. So if you are in New York, thank you, on the 28th and the 29th of October, definitely drop into PI Apparel's Retail Rebels event. I'm the chair of the event, and it's going to be an awesome opportunity to think outside of the box for retail and really get some questions answered around how do we get to the next level. So the same conversation that we're having here, we'll have similar conversations and some great takeaways. So definitely show up.
Nice. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yes. Thank you, Matt. This is awesome.
We have made it to the end of another episode. Thank you for tuning in. A couple of things before you go. If you have found value in this episode, I am sure you'll find value in what we have coming up. So please subscribe so you will have access and know when we launch the next episode. Also, leave a review. The more reviews we have, the further our reach becomes, and I truly want this to be heard by as many leaders as possible. Don't hog this all for yourself. I would love to hear your insights on this topic, so meet me on social media at Matt Mueller Innovation on LinkedIn and Instagram. And lastly, if you want to learn more about my story and what I can do for you and your company, go to themindfulinnovator.com. I would love to help you innovate on purpose. Until next time, just remember, bring a level of awareness to each conversation, each observation, each moment, and you can create great change in this world. Thank you.